entertain a motion to defer to our council to explain what our purpose is here for this evening.
Motion to defer to our attorney to discuss the complaint,
Pending complaint.
any complaint.
I need a voice roll call, please.
Councilors Brooks,
Yes.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Costello. Yes. Lobos,
Yes.
Valakir.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
So the city of Chicopee received a complaint from a constituent. And that complaint has to do with our August 8th meeting that we had here in the auditorium. And you may recall that meeting had to do with 357.
Sorry about that. No, sorry, apologize. So this meeting was called because we received a complaint from a constituent about an allegation that allegedly occurred at our August 8th License Committee meeting. And you may recall that at that meeting, we had two items on the agenda. And they both pertain to Burnett Road, and they have to do with, one was a gasoline service license. And the second one was for the tanks, for the installation of the tanks. And you may recall at that meeting, we did call the meeting to order, that nobody was participating remotely at that meeting. And that the president or the chairperson of that meeting allowed the applicant a significant amount of time to present his case to the committee. Once that portion was done, he allowed the representatives of the opposing party through their attorney, and I believe they had a traffic engineer present their version of events and present their arguments to the committee. Once that was completed, we allowed the public to voice their concerns. We gave each public person who wanted to speak 3 minutes. And then at the end of that, we did allow the applicant a period of rebuttal. And we also allowed the attorney and the engineer a period of rebuttal as well for the opponents. So once that was taken as evidence, the public portion was closed. And you may recall then this committee did have some deliberations. At the conclusion of that deliberation, there was a motion made by one of the counselors, I believe it was Councilor Dobaz. That motion was seconded. Once that motion was seconded, that item was on the floor for discussion. And as you know, the license committee's purpose is to provide advice to the full council. So they provide a recommendation to the council, who ultimately, as you all know, have the ability to pass those requested applications. So as part of that, our rules require that we submit, and we have one here tonight, that we have a committee report. And that committee report has our notes on it, whether it be you want a restriction, you want a condition, and it also has on there the motion, who made the motion, and who seconded the motion. Rules also require that each member sign that committee report, because that, again, is what's transmitted to the full council at our next meeting, so that the full council has a summary of what was discussed, what, if any, conditions were imposed, and specifically who voted where. As you are also all aware, that document is a public document that is available to the public. And that was in fact provided to the person who filed the complaint a day or two afterwards. So that was provided by our office. So at the conclusion of that, the chairperson on both matters that we before the council stated to the public that in fact, the committee had voted to send an unfavorable recommendation to the full council, and that will be submitted and transmitted for our September 8th meeting. So once I received the application or the complaint from the constituent, I did call the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office is the enforcement authority. So I did explain to her what the complaint alleged. I did explain to her exactly what I've just explained to the committee, the fact that we do have a committee report, that it is public record, that we do sign it because that gets transmitted. And I also stated to her that once the chairperson received that back, the chairperson did state, again, on both motions, that they would be referred unfavorably to the full council. And when I explained that to the representative at the Attorney General's office, she did not see that that was a complaint or what the constituent talked about as a secret vote. So she did not feel that it was a secret vote. The fact that it was a public document available to the public and the fact that the chairperson did declare in public forum to the audience that it was a unfavorable recommendation that would be submitted to the council. The constituent also had an issue with Councilor Flam walking around, and I think it's important for the public to know why that happened, because that typically, as we all know, does not happen. So you may recall, prior to the commencement of our August 8th meeting, we were informed by our IT person that unfortunately these mics at this particular table were not working. So that required that we go to the mics that were working. Those mics that were working that night were the mics in front of everybody's seat. And the public mic was also working. So we had those mics working. So typically we wouldn't have to shuffle the paperwork around. We simply sit at this table in front of the public and sign that form. So the reason President Laflamme was going from place to place, which may have been confusing to the public, was only because these mics weren't working and we had to transmit the document from one person to the other. Because we had the chairperson all the way to the left, and we had one of the members all the way to the right. So that was just him, President Laflamme, I should say, taking the paperwork to the next person who signed the form. So I guess the purpose of this meeting is to a couple of things. One, first and foremost, when a complaint is filed with the public body, that public body must act within 14 business days of receiving the complaint. So that's why we had to rush to the meeting, because we needed to do that within 14 days. Now you can ask for an extension, which we've done on 2 other open meeting violations, but in this one, I felt we could get the committee together to discuss it. So I will need a vote from the council to allow me to answer the complaint, because the rules require that the body meet to discuss the complaint and authorize, if it's not the body that responds itself, authorize the law department or some other individual to answer on your behalf. So the purpose of the meeting really is twofold. One is to authorize the law department to answer the complaint. So procedurally, the way this will work is once we get that vote, I will respond in writing to the applicant, and the applicant will receive a copy of our answer, as will the Attorney General's office. So I guess really the bottom line is I hope this kind of explains the reason why we were walking around the tables, why we weren't at this table, because we normally are, and why the public can see us actually signing the documents. But I guess the question is, and it's for the board to talk about, is to decide whether or not there should be a change to our process or our procedure. That's something that's ultimately going to have to go to the Rules Committee, but it's certainly something that we can talk about. So I don't believe that we should change or could change the fact that we have to sign the document stating what our position is, because that gets transmitted to the full council. That is a public document, and in fact becomes part of the public agenda when it gets to our next meeting. So, you know, it's certainly a public document. If someone wants it, you're welcome to it. If someone asked me that evening or asked anybody, I think maybe some of you did respond to the constituents who voted how, that's fine as well. It is a public document. We're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can. So 2 things. One is I just need your permission to respond to the complaint. And secondly, a discussion as to whether or not you're satisfied with that, given the fact that at least one constituent was not satisfied with or felt as though maybe we took a secret vote when clearly we did not. But if it appears that way, maybe it's something we should talk about. Should we change it?
And I just have a question.
Sure.
There was a meeting that I was at, there was a meeting that I was at that I didn't get the form. And it was documented in public record that I didn't sign the form. So we have to be very careful, you know, to make sure, and Councilor Laflamme was careful that night that everybody signed the form. So we have to be careful. But what I can't understand is why we want to do it, signing, and how about if we do both? Do a oral roll call. That way it's on public record, and people that are watching this can know who voted for what, because they don't know that. At that meeting, the vote was unfavorable recommendation 3-2. but the public didn't know who voted in favor or unfavorably. And I think to have transparency, they should know that. They shouldn't have to come down here and get a written form. Especially if everybody isn't always able to sign it for one reason or another, because that can happen. But if it's verbally noted, then you're covering yourself, okay? Everybody would know who voted for what and then move on. And if you want to do the written documentation, that's okay, as long as everybody gets it. Because every now and then, there's always going to be a slip up when you do it in that fashion. So my recommendation would be if we could change, this is just my opinion, because people did ask me who voted for what. They didn't know that. So my recommendation would be that we change it a bit, become more transparent, and have a oral roll call vote. And if you want to go around with the paper, be very careful that everybody gets to sign it. I remember that night at first George Balakir didn't sign it and they had to go back to him. So that can be kind of difficult, but that's my recommendation is we do an oral vote along with the written vote. Thank you.
Mary Beth, if I can make a recommendation, you have a formal motion to refer to the Rules Committee. If Counselor or President Laflamme will convene a meeting to examine the policies of our subcommittees.
Okay, I make a motion.
If
Sorry.
I could just comment before you make that motion, only because
Sure.
I think it's important. So I think that's a very good recommendation. And it kind of bleeds into another open meeting complaint that we received from the same constituent. That open meeting complaint talks specifically about roll calls. So unfortunately, we have two separate sets of rules depending upon whether someone is actually participating remotely or not. So I just would like to just take a couple of minutes just to step back. So prior to COVID, the city of Chicopee had some preliminary discussions as to whether or not we wanted to allow remote participation. Prior to COVID and prior to Governor Baker's order, the law required that if a municipality wanted to remotely participate, the chief executive office would have to vote that in. Prior to COVID, the city of Chicopee was of the opinion that we should not allow remote participation, that we should require the chair to be physically present, and we should require a majority of the members to be physically present. And I think the purpose of that was to provide transparency as well as for the public to come in and actually visually see and hear exactly what was going on. So prior to COVID, there was some discussions about remote participation. But as you all know, as a result of COVID, that became, at least at the beginning of COVID, almost impossible to do because everybody was just unsure what was happening with COVID. So as a result of that, Governor Baker, I believe it was March 12th, 2020, signed an executive order that carte blanche allowed municipalities to remotely participate. Whether or not you had done it by the rule, which was by a chief executive office, Governor Baker's order allowed us to do it. So in March of 2020, we began to do that. When that order came down, I looked at Governor Baker's order. It was a 3-page order. And in that order, it simply stated that municipalities could, if they so chose, remotely participate, regardless of whether or not they had formally voted to do so. So when I saw that order, obviously I said the city of Chicopee, as did many municipalities around here, did start to remotely participate. What I didn't do was to look at the rules that were promulgated by the Attorney General's office. So the Attorney General, when you had to have a formal vote of the city, they promulgated certain rules that said, if you by your chief executive officer allow remote participation, there are certain things you have to do. And essentially it boils down to, if someone remotely participates, you have to identify that, the chair identifies that. and all votes must be by roll call. Okay? So that's something that I missed because I didn't read further into the open meeting law. I thought I saw Governor Baker's order. It was very simple that it said you can remotely participate. So the reason I bring that up is because your requirement that there be not only a handwritten notice on our committee reports, but if someone participates remotely, we now have to. So, but there is a gap because we as the city of Chicopee did not formally adopt remote participation. We're following Governor Baker's order, which allowed us to do that. So if someone does not participate remotely, we're allowed to conduct business as we have for the last 130 years, which is we're required to do roll calls for certain things, but certain ministerial things we're not. So if no one is participating remotely, for example, all of our financial orders, by our own orders, have to be by roll call. If we accept a donation, as you know, has to be done by roll call. If we consider a special permit, has to be done by a roll call. If we consider a zone change, has to be done by roll call. If we authorize a bond, law requires it be done by roll call. But the ministerial ones are not. And when I say ministerial, I mean because the city of Chicopee, in my opinion, has been extremely transparent compared to other local communities. I can tell you that I read an article about the city of Springfield that just recently went from being fully remote. So in Springfield, there wasn't an opportunity for the public to come to their meetings. They were fully remote. We didn't do that. I think for the past better part of 18 months, we've been here, we've invited the public, we've encouraged the public, we've had massive crowds here. So we're as transparent as we possibly can be. But the rules are the rules. And if the Attorney General says to me, you read that rule wrong, you read it so just that you can participate remotely and don't have to abide by our rules and regulations because you interpreted that as the city of Chicopee didn't adopt it, so I don't have to follow those promulgated rules. I was wrong. I admit to that. So when you talk about a roll call, it's in very limited circumstances where we are not allowed to do a roll call.
Council or President LaFleur.
Yeah, I have just a couple of things. The Rules Committee, I hope you guys send this to Rules for one. I think a motion was on the floor. But I believe I'll wait to do a Rules meeting till after the next two are done. So that we get all the information from the other two. If there's some other changes that come out of those two, it's good that we wait for the other two complaints. That's number one. And then I will set up a meeting. The second roll call. So Dan, you mentioned on the roll call, if the participant example right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6, 7 members or 6? 5. So you're all here. So no, Bill Cushing is a guest.
Okay.
Okay, so my point, there's the point I'm trying to make here. So we have 5 members of the license committee here right now. And they could do it our normal way right now because the members of the committee are here. Although Councilor Cushing is online, we can acknowledge he's online, but he has no voting power as of right now. As well, if I was online, I would have no power either. Correct?
Yeah, so when you have these rules, as you all well know, you can go down rabbit holes because
Correct.
there's all different scenarios. And one of those is exactly what you just said. Does the Attorney General's rule requiring a roll call if one member is remotely participating? Do they mean a voting member or do they mean any member?
Right.
So that you'll get that
So
answer.
I will get that answer, at least for tonight. I'm going to assume that if any member, whether that member is voting or not, we probably should do it by roll call.
Okay.
But you make a perfect example. These rules, they go left and right, and there's all different scenarios, and you just do the best you possibly can. But it's important, I think, for the council to know that the important votes have always been taken by roll call.
Absolutely.
The votes for taking something out of order because your constituents are here and they're on the bottom of the list, and it's a simple matter, you get them out. Or a vote to take a 5-minute recess because someone has a coughing fit. or a roll call that says a proposed ordinance has to go to committee. Well, it has to by rule go to committee. So those ministerial votes are the ones that we typically have taken by voice vote. And again, as I mentioned, we've had the chairperson in the seat at our committee and council meetings. And we've had 10, 11, 12 members present out of 13. So the chair could recognize from the people that are present here whether or not the vote carried. And the chairperson and the president always declared what the vote was. So you're right, there's rabbit holes going. We're just gonna have to roll with the rabbit holes, but at least for now, until I get that answer, because Bill Corshane is present, he is not a voting member, but we might as well err on the side of caution and say, regardless of what it is, it's gotta be by roll call.
Yes, for now. And that's okay. I just want to get it, how we used to do it, and we had members here
Right,
tonight.
there's clearly two sets of rules here.
And I think that's a benefit of why I'll wait the extra timing, not to judge to the answers, and then you can pass this through the attorney generals too.
Right.
To get dot our i's and cross our t's. Counselor Costello mentioned, the roll call. I have no problems in myself with that when we go to that issue of telling the public where we vote. But there's one more thing I want to do, and I'm going to make sure we put this in the rules. All members must sit at the table. We can't have them over there, over here, and over there for what the purpose of what I had to do. To be transparent, the public's looking at that one table right now that you guys are all sitting on, whether it's my meeting or anybody. I think it's as Councilor Costello says, regarding the voting in that, saying that way, I think we all need to sit around a table too, so the public knows who the members are that they can listen to on their votes and why. It won't be where, why is, Council President Frank Laflamme walking around? I only did it to make sure the members were sitting and could, in case their constituents want to say anything. So I think that's another important thing. So all that being said, I think this meeting will come out with some good ideas. And I think with the next two meetings we have, some more ideas will come, and then we'll have our meeting. I'll set the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Zagorowski.
Yeah, I just have two small questions, and this is gonna to our attorney. Maybe you can answer them. I have not seen the official complaint. Could you read the exact?
Yeah,
items that are on
would have
that
been put in
complaint?
your box, but I will read the
Want me to give
complaint.
it to him?
For the record, I've
For
never.
the record,
seen it.
I
Hold
can
it.
read, okay. So the complaint was made, the date of the allegation was 8/8/2022. And it states as follows. The License Committee met on 8/8/2022. The purpose of the meeting. Application for a fuel storage license located at 357 Burnett Road for 48,000 for 12,000 tank above ground storage, 40,000 underground storage, AST diesel, UST 20,000 regular gasoline, 8,000 super gasoline, 12,000 DEF. Applicant address Chicopee and Inc., 851 East Columbus Avenue, Springfield, Mass. 01105. Application for a service license located at 357 Burnett Road. Applicant address Pilot Travel Centers LLC, 5508 Lonis Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37909. Motions were made on these licenses. A secret ballot was taken on these two motions. The council chair, Frank Laflamme, walked around the councilman with a piece of paper, having them write their vote of each of these motions. The chair, Shane Brooks, gave the outcome, quote unquote, whether or not approved, only of the actions. There was no roll call for the votes, and the roll call vote was never read. An audio video recording is available at a specific email address. There is dead silence as members were voting, and then Mr. Brooks states the results. I was in attendance at this meeting, and I was shocked when I realized the committee was having a secret ballot. It was not announced to the citizens at the meeting and never explained.
Thank you, Dan.
I can go on.
No, I agree. See, I didn't have a copy of it in hand. I wanted to see it. Now I've got it. Also, there definitely was not a secret ballot taken anytime during that meeting, right?
No, the document was as you know, a committee report that gets transmitted to the city council. they're the ones who have final authority on whether or not to approve or disapprove of something. So it wasn't a secret ballot. It's open to the public. She was given a copy when she came to our office. It does become broadcast throughout the community once we have our September 8th meeting, because it does become part of our public agenda. And as I mentioned, the chairperson did state the results of the vote at the termination of the meeting. And for what it's worth, the attorney for the opponents of the project actually came up to myself and maybe one other counselor and complimented us on how well the meeting was run. So, but that's neither here nor there. If there's a complaint, we have to address it. If there's a better way of doing business, I think it's in our best interest to do that.
If I may just add to that real quick, since we're on, if I could just add to what you read it. So I just want to make a comment. It said Frank Laflamme walked around the councilman with a piece of paper having them write their vote for each of these motions. I just want to know for the public and for is that these were two separate times I walked around. It wasn't done all at one time because it doesn't say, each time. It says walked around. So each one that the chairman did, they did the vote of that one. Then they read the second one, and I walked around with that just to get it because it was on both sides of the table here. And then the chairman read both of them. So just note there wasn't one piece of paper for both votes. They were both separate times it was done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beth or Frank, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Now, for tonight's meeting, do we have to have public input?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure we open it up. at
When-
some point
when-
to the
yeah.
Public, because
Yeah, when we have anybody on Zoom, I don't know if Bill or wants to speak or anyone in the public, they're more than welcome to speak.
okay, I'm all set. I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget that.
So Mary Beth, now I'll entertain your motion to refer our practices around subcommittee meetings to the rules.
Yeah,
subcommittee.
motion to refer to the reviews, to the Rules Committee practices in regards to subcommittee procedures.
Motion made and seconded. Please call the roll, Carla.
Excuse me.
Counselor Brooks,
Before you do that, could we not just say subcommittee meetings, all meetings?
All
All
meetings.
meetings.
Please,
okay.
yeah, take the word
Yeah.
subcommittee out and put all. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Amend to all meetings.
Meetings, yeah.
Thank you.
So motion made and seconded, including the amendment of all committee meetings. Carla, please call the roll.
Counselors Brooks,
Yes.
Crumpets,
Yes.
Piniac Costello.
Yes,
Dobos,
Yes.
Valakir.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Yes, we need a separate sheet and now we need so there's nobody, we've confirmed nobody that, I think the only one on there is Bill, right?
Just Bill.
Correct. So I will entertain a motion to place on file.
Well, the motion has to be to allow the law department to respond to the complaint,
So placing on file
and place on file
and
or authorize, allow, it's fine.
so motion to allow the city law department to respond to complaint and to place the matter on file.
So motion made and seconded that we place this report on file and we allow the law department to respond to the complaint.
Right.
Carla, please call the roll.
Counselors Brooks,
Yes.
Crumpets,
Yes.
Piniac Costello.
Yes,
Dobos.
Yes.
Valakir.
Yes. Just one second.
did somebody say that people are allowed to speak in public here? Public, there's somebody here.
She declined.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you. Want to make sure everything's.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made second to adjourn. Carla, please call the roll.
Counselors Brooks,
Yes.
Crumpets,
Yes.
Piniac Costello.
Yes.
Dobos.
Yes.
Valakir.
Yes.
That was-
And the motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.